So there's a really interesting article appearing today on the iol.co.za news site talking about no more water mafias. Civil society demands municipalization of Gauteng's water services. I'm going to be chatting to Mbasa Mvenene. He's a governance and political analyst about that exact question right now. Mbasa, thank you so much for being with us on ChaiFM.
Thank you for having me, and greetings to everyone listening.
Mbasa, the mood of communities in general, how desperate are communities right now for a real fix to South Africa's or Gauteng's water crisis?
I mean, desperation levels are extremely high. I think we can see that when we look at the media or our television screens. And I think there is a huge call, mainly from civil society, that basic services such as water are things which we should not even be discussing at this stage of development within our democracy.
People kind of like to throw around the term water tank mafia, but I'm not 100% sure we all actually know what it means. It still kind of feels a bit abstract. In plain language, what does the water tank mafia actually look like on the ground?
Okay, sure thing. So I think the word mafia there gives it away. So the idea here is that this is a group of service providers who profit from government failure or municipal failure. So in other words, what happens is that the tendering system then creates a perverse incentive for them, because whenever public infrastructure is repaired, whenever it's maintained, then that means that business for them runs dry. So for them to continue to make money, they have to organize themselves, some politically connected, in such a way where the problem of water shortages persists. Because if that problem persists, then it means that their pockets get factored.
And to what extent are people being exploited by these water tank mafia people? To what extent are they overpaying for the water that actually is their right?
Well, actually, in fact, I think the people are losing in terms of public resources being spent in a way that is wasteful, right, or irregular, because it is municipalities that end up overpaying when they should be providing water, because water is a constitutional right, and therefore it should be within public control, and it should be provided on the basis of need and not profitability. It shouldn't become a business model. And so I think people pay indirectly in a way where public resources are being overstretched.
So, that's an interesting take, because civil society right now is calling for water tanker services to be pulled away from private contractors and to be brought inside municipalities. Mabasa, how practical is that?
Well, for me, the practicality depends on the political appetite for that to happen, number one. Secondly, it depends on the availability of money to make that a reality. And thirdly, it will also be largely influenced by the actions, or rather the reaction of the water tanker mafia, because any action by municipalities or the state more broadly to build its capacity means that they run out of business. And so we all know that in South Africa, there's this big problem where people who stand for truth or who expose truth will, in some way face a threat to their lives and so on. And so I think these three factors are quite very critical to seeing a municipalization of water tankers.
Mabasa, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I recall seeing not too long ago a documentary on Lebanon, saying that Lebanon was pretty much a failed state, talking about the provision of electricity, talking about exactly this, but in the context of the provision of electricity, that those who own and supply the generators have an absolute interest in maintaining the status quo because it is lucrative and they are becoming incredibly wealthy, and it's got to a point where it's actually systemic, where nobody can do anything about it. And one wonders to what extent it's become a systemic issue in South Africa and it's too late to be doing anything about it.
I don't think in South Africa we have reached that point yet. I think the situation is still, the situation can still be saved. But I think that what we need most importantly in South Africa is the political appetite. We need the political will to exist, because in most cases, whenever there's this kind of water tanker mafia thing going on, there is a corresponding a political actor or public sector official who is allowing that mafia to thrive. And so what we need here is a political appetite. We need a civil service of people who are upright and people who will always prioritize or privilege the public interest.
So Mbasa, apparently civil society wants a full investigation into all tanker tenders over the past 5 years. I'm asking you to imagine now, but if that actually did happen, what do you reckon they'd find?
Well, I think they may find some evidence. I mean, the Madlanga commission is proving to be surprisingly effective in terms of us seeing arrests and so on and so forth. But I think commissions really would be another drain on the fiscus, and I'd rather we see a different form of investigation, because remember, the records are kept within municipal offices, and so why should there be a commission when an investigation can be lodged directly into an evaluation of the municipal records of, let's say, Gauteng or Johannesburg more specifically? And I think that would drain less of the fiscus.
There have also been strong warnings about acid mine drainage and big businesses polluting the system. And one wonders how much of our water crisis is actually being driven by industry rather than by municipalities.
Well, I think it's a combination of both, but the one that speaks to mining and big business, I think there it's showing gaps within our regulatory infrastructure as South Africa. I think I've read numerous reports in previous years that clearly show that, I mean, big business in South Africa is having a field day, and there is no enforcement. And so I think it's a combination of both, but it indicates a big gap in terms of how government is regulating or disciplining rather big business or other big polluters.
Mabasa, final question for you this afternoon. It's a big one. So for the ordinary listener who just wants water to come out of the tap when they open it, it's not exactly a big ask. What's the one thing that they need to understand about how we got to where we are and what needs to happen next?
Okay, so we got here by electing people who have no idea what they're doing, by electing people who do not carry a public interest or who do not really prioritize development. And I think what needs to happen going forward is that, I mean, we have frequent election cycles in South Africa, and I think that one way where we can hold the people we elect accountable is to either reward good performance or punish poor performance. So come November, we must decide whether we see good performance or we see poor performance, and our votes must reflect our sentiments in terms of our protests and strikes and so on. And we then need to see a people, a civil service, political actors who then will prioritize the public interest and always privilege development.
Mbasa Mvenene, thank you so much for talking to me on ChaiFM this afternoon.